Have you ever gotten that advice, just be yourself? I mean, it's always meant well, right? But if you've ever felt that buzz of anxiety in a room full of people, you know it feels basically impossible. So what if the goal isn't to change who you are at all? What if it's just about shedding those layers of anxiety that keep your true self hidden away? Well, in this explainer, we're going to break down exactly how social anxiety works and, more importantly, give you the tools to rise above it. So let's dive in.
Okay, so let's meet Mo. This guy is a whip-smart lawyer. He's passionate about social justice, genuinely a good, respectful person. But you put him in a meeting, and he just freezes. He has these brilliant things he wants to add, but by the time he gets up the nerve to say something, the conversation's already moved on. And that silence just becomes this heavy, heavy weight, and he's convinced everyone is staring at him, judging him. Mo's story, it's the perfect window into a feeling that is so incredibly common.
The thing about Mo's struggle is that it isn't some personal failing. It's a shared human experience. So let's frame this not as something that's wrong with you, but as a really common challenge that actually has a name and, way more importantly, has a solution. It's this feeling of being trapped behind a wall of your own silence.
So what is this thing, really? Well, you could say social anxiety is basically self-consciousness on steroids. It's this deep fear that people will see something bad about you, that you're weird or awkward or incompetent, and that they'll reject you because of it. It's all driven by the fear of what the source material calls the reveal. That one moment where you're convinced your biggest flaws will be exposed for the whole world to see.
And here is a number that just completely changes the game. Get this. If you feel this way, you are in very, very good company. A whopping 99% of people say they feel socially anxious at times. That means this feeling isn't just common, it's pretty much universal. And as for that other 1%, well, the author has a theory. I'm looking at you, psychopaths.
Okay, so if almost everyone feels this, where does it come from? How does it get so powerful for some of us? We are about to pop the hood and look at the mechanics of social anxiety, what I like to call the anxiety engine. Because, understanding the cause, that's the very first step to taking back control.
Let's meet Jim. His story perfectly lays out these three parts. First, you've got genetics. Jim's mom, Maeve, was a deeply anxious person. And if you have a parent with an anxiety disorder, your own risk can be 4 to 6 times higher. Second, there's learning. Maeve was constantly terrified of being judged by the neighbors, and she drilled that into Jim. This sense that he was always being watched, always in a fishbowl. But the final piece, the one that really poured fuel on the fire, was avoidance. When Jim was 14, he found out his crush, Dina, liked him back. And what did he do? He started literally hiding from her, ducking behind bushes, behind cars. That, he says, was the moment I taught myself avoidance.
And this metaphor just illustrates the core problem so perfectly. See, avoidance feels like it's saving you. Hiding from Dina gave Jim instant relief from his pounding heart. But in the long run, avoidance is a disaster. It teaches your brain two very powerful lies. Number one, that the situation is genuinely dangerous. And number two, that you just can't handle it. It is the primary engine that keeps that anxiety running year after year after year.
All right, so now that we get the engine, how do we turn the darn thing off? This is where we get practical. We are going to build a mental toolkit designed to rewire the exact thought patterns that keep that anxiety engine humming.
We all have an internal narrator. And for a lot of people with social anxiety, it's a really harsh inner critic. But the alternative isn't just empty praise. It's self-compassion. Think of it like this. You've got two swim coaches. First one yells at a kid who's struggling, shames him, and makes him never want to get back in the pool. The other coach says, "Hey, you're working so hard, nice job. Let's try it this way." Now, which coach is actually going to be effective? It's the second one, every single time. Self-compassion is your internal good coach. It creates that safe, supportive space where you can actually dare to be brave.
So our first tool is called Replace. It's all about challenging that inner critic with 3 key questions. The first one is, how bad would that really be? Your inner critic is screaming, "You'll go completely blank during the presentation and you're going to get fired." This question forces you to challenge that catastrophic thinking.
I mean, is it really more likely you'll get fired, or that maybe, just maybe, people will feel a moment of empathy and then go right back to thinking about what's for lunch? It shrinks the disaster down to its real, manageable size.
Next up, what are the odds? Let's be honest. Our anxious brain is just terrible at statistics. It takes a tiny possibility, like saying something a little awkward on a date, and it inflates it into a certainty that you will die alone surrounded by 9 cats. This question is a reality check. What are the actual odds of your worst-case scenario happening? Usually, they're much, much lower than your anxiety wants you to believe.
And this final question, this one might be the most empowering of all. How would I cope? See, anxiety thrives on this belief that we just can't handle a bad situation. This question reminds you that, actually, you can. So what if the joke falls flat? Well, you'd feel embarrassed for a minute, then you'd change the subject, you'd go home, watch some TV, and life would absolutely go on. You have resources. You are resilient. This question is all about reminding your brain of that simple fact.
So, we've started to rewire our thinking, and now it's time for action. This is kind of the climax of our journey. Because here's the secret. Confidence isn't something you just wait around for. It's something you build. And you build it by doing the very thing that scares you. This quote comes from Brandon Stanton, the guy who created the global phenomenon, Humans of New York. To get that project started, he had to approach thousands of complete strangers on the streets of New York City. He didn't wait until he felt confident. He knew that was impossible. He earned his confidence one uncomfortable conversation at a time. So let's completely reframe what it means to be brave. It is not about not being afraid. In fact, fear is kind of a prerequisite for bravery. True courage is feeling that fear, that knot in your stomach, that discomfort, and taking the step anyway. Confidence doesn't lead the way, it sprints to catch up with your actions.
So how do you even start? With a challenge list. This is your personal roadmap for taking action. First, you start with things that scare you just a little bit. Then, make your goals concrete and measurable. And this part is key. Judge your success based on whether you did the thing, not on how you felt while you were doing it. If you were terrified out of your mind but you still said hello, that is a 100% win. And finally, you have to drop those safety behaviors, like staring at your phone. That's the life preserver that's actually holding you underwater. So after challenging our thoughts and finally taking action, what's the result? What's the other side of this whole journey even look like? This is the payoff, the ultimate takeaway from all this hard work. The objective was never to become the life of the party or some flawless public speaker. The real prize is so much better than that. It's the quiet confidence to just feel comfortable in your own skin. It's having the freedom to just show up, to participate in your own life, and to let people see the real you. Let's go back to Jim, the man who used to hide from his crush. After decades of avoidance, he decided to make a huge change and started ballroom dancing. And the result? He says, "I've met more people in the past 4 years than I have in the past 30. On his 56th birthday, he wasn't hiding anymore. He was out on the dance floor, surrounded by friends, feeling this deep sense of pride. He had finally found his way back to himself. There's this guy, Jia Zhang, who did a project called 100 Days of Rejection. He forced himself to make all these ridiculous requests to strangers, fully expecting them to shut him down. And yeah, he got rejected, but he discovered something absolutely profound along the way. His anxious brain had predicted a world full of hostility and ridicule. But the reality? People were overwhelmingly kind. His conclusion just completely dismantles the core fear of social anxiety. The world is a lot nicer than we think. Overcoming social anxiety isn't about one giant leap of faith. It's about a series of small, brave steps. You don't have to become someone new. You just need to give the person you already are, the person who's been hiding underneath the anxiety, a chance to be seen. So the question I want to leave you with is this. What's one small step you could take? Just one, because that's where this whole journey really begins.